Hi everyone, this is Rob coming to you from the Mishimoto Engineering Facility. If you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook for more exclusive content. Today, we're going to install our all-aluminum radiator and our silicone radiator hoses in your 2014 Plus Fiesta ST. Let's get started. Tools required for installation are 2.5mm Allen key, T20 Torx, 8mm swivel socket, 1/2-inch socket, 7, 8, 10mm sockets, long 1/4-inch drive extension, 1/4-inch drive ratchet, 13mm socket, 3/8 drive ratchet, a panel tool, flat and Phillips head screwdrivers, pop clip pliers, channel lock pliers, a hose clamp tool, and Mishimoto's liquid chill. Installation time is 4 to 5 hours, and installation difficulty is a 5 out of 5. Remove the headlights. Each is held in by 2 bolts and 1 Phillips head pop clip. Disconnect the electrical harness from the headlight assembly. Slide the headlights back towards the cabin of the car, then lift it upwards to unseat it from the clip that secures the bottom of the headlight housing. Remove the 2 Phillips head pop clips from the top of the bumper cover. Remove the fasteners that secure the fender liner to the front bumper cover. There are 2 T20 Torx, 1 7mm bolt, and 1 pop clip on each side. Remove the 5 7mm bolts that secure the splash shield to the front bumper cover. Disconnect the electrical harness from the fog lights on both sides of the vehicle. Remove the 6 8mm bolts that secure the fender to the front bumper cover. To make it easier to access these bolts, we suggest using a long extension with a swivel or swivel socket. Slide the bumper cover forward and remove it from the vehicle. Remove the 3 4mm Allen bolts that secure the Mishimoto airbox cover. Loosen the air filter clamp with a flathead screwdriver. Disconnect the mass airflow sensor by depressing the locking tab and sliding the connector apart. Unlock the connector on the emissions hose near the mass airflow sensor by spreading the fingers on the green locking tab and sliding it away from the connector. Then slide the hose off the port. Remove the plastic engine cover by lifting upwards. The cover is held in place by 4 rubber grommets. Release the crankcase vent tube from the intake by squeezing the connector and sliding it off the port. Loosen the clamp that secures the intake pipe to the silicone intake boot with a flathead screwdriver. Remove the 10mm nut that secures the intake pipe to the valve cover. Lift the intake pipe off the stud on the valve cover, then separate it from the silicone intake boot. Remove the air filter from the intake pipe, then remove it from the vehicle completely. Remove the intake pipe from the engine bay. Loosen the air duct from the radiator support by gently prying it off with a screwdriver. Remove the lower section of the airbox and the air intake duct from the vehicle by lifting the airbox upwards. Position a coolant drain pan under the lower radiator hose where it connects to the radiator. Using pliers or a clamp tool, compress the tabs on the clamp that secure the lower radiator hose to the radiator. Slowly work the lower hose off the radiator to drain the coolant. Our vehicle had a worm gear clamp installed on this hose, but yours may still have the constant tension clamp. Locate the upper radiator hose. Remove the clip that secures the auxiliary coolant port to the upper radiator hose. Using pliers or a hose clamp tool, compress the tabs on the clamp that secure the upper radiator hose to the engine and slide the clamp down the hose. Then remove the radiator hose from the engine. Using pliers or a clamp tool, compress the tabs on the clamp that secure the radiator hose to the radiator and slide the clamp down the hose. Then remove the upper radiator hose from the radiator. Disconnect the hood latch sensor electrical harness by depressing the locking tab and sliding the connector apart. Using a panel tool, release the tree clips which secure the electrical harness from the upper radiator support and the fan shroud. There are 4 tree clips that support this harness. A few of ours were broken. Disconnect the hood latch cable from the radiator support. The cable sleeve clips into the hood latch assembly, and the cable itself is secured by a metal slug at the end of the cable. Slide these connections apart. Release the hood latch cable from the fan shroud, then feed it back through the radiator support and lay it off to the side. Disconnect the electrical harness from the air temperature sensor located on the driver's side of the upper air diverter in front of the radiator. Release the clip that secures the electrical harness to the radiator support. Disconnect the electrical harness from the driver's side impact sensor located on the support beam in front of the radiator. Then feed the electrical harness back through the radiator support. Follow this harness back and locate the white tree clip that secures the harness to the crash beam. Remove this tree clip from the crash beam. Release the electrical harness from the lower section of the driver's side crash beam. Disconnect the electrical harness from the passenger side impact sensor located on the support beam in front of the radiator. Release the clip that secures the electrical harness to the radiator support. Release the white tree clip that secures the electrical harness to the crash beam. Disconnect the white tree clip from the lower section of the passenger side crash beam. Disconnect the electrical harness from the horn assembly. Loosen the clamps that secure the intercooler piping to the intercooler. Remove the 5 bolts that secure the splash shield to the radiator support. There are 2 above the intercooler and 3 along its lower edge. Remove the splash shield from the vehicle. Remove the hood prop rod from the radiator support and relocate it to one of the holes in the body, or support the hood with a length of wood or pipe. Support the front end of the vehicle on a service cart or some buckets in preparation for removal. The front end is very heavy, so get a friend to help. The AC lines are still connected on the passenger side and can be damaged if they are bent too far. Loosen the 8 bolts that secure the crash beam to the frame of the vehicle. There are 4 bolts on each side. Leave at least 1 bolt partially installed on each side to hold the weight of the front end. Once the front end is supported, completely remove the bolts that secure the crash beam to the frame. The front end is now only attached by the AC lines. Slide the front end forward away from the vehicle. The AC line on the passenger side will allow you to move the front end out a few inches, but do not bend or kink the AC hardline. Disconnect the clips that secure the top of the fan shroud by lifting the tabs. Then slide the top of the fan shroud back and lift it out of the radiator support. There are 2 feet that hold the bottom end. Completely remove the fan shroud from the vehicle. Locate the upper radiator mounts. There are 2 elongated half-moon clips that secure the radiator along the top edge of the radiator support. Remove them by wedging a screwdriver between the round portion of the mount and twisting to release the clips. Remove the clips completely. Underneath the upper radiator mounts, there are 2 rubber isolators. Remove these isolators. Note the position of these isolators for installation, as they only install one way. Tilt the top of the radiator condenser assembly back towards the engine and lift it upwards. The radiator and condenser will come out as one unit. At this point, the front end of the vehicle is free and can be moved away for easier access if you desire. Release the tabs that secure the bottom of the condenser to the radiator by pushing them down. Then separate the radiator from the condenser and remove the radiator completely. Take care not to bend the fins on the condenser when removing the radiator. Using pliers or a hose clamp tool, compress the clamp that secures the lower radiator hose to the engine. Then slide the clamp down the hose. Completely remove the hose from the engine. Lubricate the inner lip of the Mishimoto silicone lower radiator hose with fresh coolant and install it onto the engine. Secure the hose with the provided worm gear clamp. Lubricate the inner lip of the upper radiator hose with fresh coolant and install it onto the engine. Secure the hose with the provided worm gear clamp. Now let's prep the Mishimoto fan shroud. Disconnect the fan wiring harness from the fan control module. Lift up the gray tab on the connector, then slide the connector off the fan control module. Remove the screw that secures the fan control module to the fan shroud, then slide the module out of the fan shroud. There are two tabs that seat the module into the shroud. Transfer the module to the Mishimoto fan shroud and secure it with a supplied 2.5mm Allen head bolt. Remove the three 8mm bolts that secure the stock fan to the fan shroud. Transfer the stock fan to the Mishimoto fan shroud, feeding the wiring through first. Take care to align the wiring on the fan with the notch on the Mishimoto fan shroud. Connect the fan wiring harness to the fan control module. Align the feet of the motor guard with the holes in the fan shroud. Then secure the fan and guard with the original hardware. Make sure the fan wiring harness is aligned with the slot in the fan shroud and spin the fan by hand to make sure it moves freely and does not contact the Mishimoto fan shroud. Remove the rubber grommets from the upper mounting pegs on the stock radiator and transfer them to the Mishimoto radiator. Snug down the bleeder screw with a 1/2-inch socket, but do not over-tighten. This bleeder screw has a tapered thread and will not be flush with the radiator when fully installed. Position the assembled Mishimoto fan shroud onto the Mishimoto radiator and align the threaded holes on the shroud with the threaded dowels on the radiator. Install the flat brackets onto the shroud and radiator using the supplied hardware, but do not fully tighten them yet. Once all the bolts have been installed, position the fan shroud so it does not sit on the end tanks and tighten down the mounting bolts. Install the Mishimoto radiator onto the AC condenser. Slip the upper edge of the condenser into the slotted brackets at the top of the radiator. Then push the pegs at the bottom of the condenser into the square protrusion at the base of the radiator. The larger peg on the condenser will sit inside the square protrusion while the lower peg engages the clip on the radiator. It is very important that the condenser is properly located on the radiator. There will be some space between the upper lip of the condenser and the slotted bracket on the radiator when properly installed. If it is not properly aligned, the assembly will not fit inside the radiator support. Lower the radiator condenser assembly into the radiator support, taking care not to bend the metal AC line. There are two mounting pegs on the bottom of the radiator that slide into the rubber grommets in the radiator support. Slide the top of the radiator into the radiator support and install the rubber isolators. Note that there is a square protrusion on one side of the isolator. This side faces down towards the radiator. Then install the half-moon clips that secure the top of the radiator by sliding them in from the front. There are 2 feet on each clip that must engage simultaneously to properly hold the radiator in place. Lubricate the inner lip of the Mishimoto silicone lower radiator hose with fresh coolant and install it onto the radiator. Secure the hose with the provided worm gear clamp. Lubricate the inner lip of the Mishimoto silicone upper radiator hose with fresh coolant and install it onto the radiator. Secure the hose with the provided worm gear clamp. Connect the fan wiring harness to the fan control module. Connect the hood latch wiring harness to the hood latch. Secure the wiring harness to the radiator support with the tree clips on the harness. Align the crash beam with the frame rails. Make sure that all electrical harnesses and AC lines are clear of the crash beam to avoid pinching or damaging them. Install the crash beam and front end. Partially thread in 1 bolt on each side to support the weight of the crash beam while you get the other bolts threaded in. Double check to make sure all electrical harnesses and AC lines are clear, then fully tighten the crash beam bolts. Install the intercooler piping onto the intercooler on both sides of the vehicle. Then secure the intercooler piping with the clamps. There is a lot of adjustment in the crash beam bolts. Align the washers of the crash beam with the marks on the crash beam flange when you tighten them to maintain the original fitment. Check the fitment on the upper radiator hose, then secure it with the provided worm gear clamp. Attach the coolant hose to the radiator support with the integrated clip. Secure the fog light wiring harness to the vehicle with the integrated tree clip. Secure the crash sensor wiring harness with the black tree clip and the white tree clip integrated into the harness. Connect the electrical harness to the impact sensor and secure the harness with the integrated tree clip. Connect the wiring harness to the horn assembly. Transfer the hood prop rod from the vehicle to the original hood prop location. Secure the fog light wiring harness on the driver's side using the integrated tree clips. Secure the wiring harness for the air temp sensor and impact sensor using the integrated clips. Connect the electrical harness to the air temp sensor. Feed the electrical harness through the radiator support and connect it to the impact sensor. Then secure the electrical harness using the integrated tree clip. Install the splash shield. There are 5 bolts that secure the splash shield to the radiator support, 2 above the intercooler and 3 along its lower edge. Install the front bumper cover. Be sure to align the tabs on the front bumper with the slots on the splash shield as you slide the bumper on. Make sure the arms on the splash shield are tucked above the lip of the front bumper cover. Set the fender liner back in place. Line up the mounting pegs on the bumper cover and secure the bumper to the fenders with the 6 8mm bolts. Connect the wiring harness to the fog lights on both sides of the vehicle. You will hear a click when the connections are locked. Install the 5 7mm bolts that secure the splash shield to the front bumper cover. Secure the fender liner to the front bumper cover with the original hardware. Install the headlights. Make sure the white clip on the frame rail is aligned with the dowel on the bottom of the headlight. Connect the electrical harness. Slip the front of the headlight under the front bumper cover, then align the rear part of the headlight and drop it into the fender. Secure the headlight with the 2 bolts and the Phillips head pop clip. Install the pop clips on the top of the front bumper cover. Install the Mishimoto intake pipe to the silicone intake boot. Then slide the intake pipe into the airbox and drop the airbox in place. Install the air filter on the intake pipe and secure it with the worm gear clamp. Install the lid of the Mishimoto airbox and secure it with the 4mm Allen head bolts. Slip the grommet on the intake pipe over the stud on the valve cover and secure it with a 10mm nut. Secure the intake pipe to the silicone intake elbow with the worm gear clamp. Connect the emission hose to the intake pipe and secure it with the green locking tab. Connect the electrical harness to the mass airflow sensor. Install the crankcase breather hose onto the intake pipe. Just push it on until it clicks. Install the engine cover by pressing the grommets over the mounting pegs. Fill the system with pre-mixed Ford-approved coolant through the reservoir cap. Push down the bleeder screw as you are filling until coolant flows from the screw to release air from the top of the radiator. Start the engine and allow it to idle with the cap off. Turn the heater control valve on the vehicle's HVAC unit to full hot and put the fan on low. Monitor the engine temperature and coolant level in the reservoir. Add coolant as needed to maintain proper level in the reservoir and check your connections for leaks. If the vehicle begins to overheat or coolant starts to overflow from the reservoir, shut the engine off and allow it to cool before continuing. Once the vehicle is fully warmed up and the coolant level has stabilized, allow the vehicle to cool off completely and top off the coolant level. Now that you got your radiator installed, go ahead and double check all your hose connections, make sure the coolant level is full and properly bled, then you can go ahead and fire up your Fiesta for a test drive. Don't forget to click subscribe before you head out.